Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Creative Saints Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Josh.
We are so excited to be recording tonight. We have, I said tonight, that's a kind of a giveaway of how our day has gone.
Day crept up.
And back to evening recordings. We had an amazing day and we wanted to make sure to capture that.
Yeah.
Before we forget about it.
Exactly.
So, tomorrow's launch of the podcast, you're getting fresh information.
Very fresh.
So, let's just dive into what today held. It was super unexpected. So, let's kind of start there. Unless you want to banter a little bit more before we...
No, I think we bantered enough.
We've really kind of tried to cover the gambit of like the things that we talk about and try to make it personal and try to make it relatable, talk about the hard stuff, the things that every creative or entrepreneur, anyone that deals with clients might
likely has gone
across.
Through.
Yeah.
Experienced.
And today it was kind of a big win for us. And so it felt like something worth talking about because I think for the sake of being humble, it would be easy to not talk about it. And like, we don't want to be exclusive. We understand that entrepreneurs go through really hard times and dealing with clients can be hard. But there are big wins that deserve to be celebrated along the journey. And we had one of those today.
We did have one of those. And it might be cool to even record an episode and discuss after a really hard day.
Yeah.
There are ebbs and flows. We've talked about that the whole time. And there are things that people experience. And it's good to know, like, you're not alone.
Yeah.
These things happen to all of us. And you don't phase out of it.
No, it's just an endless cycle of
humanness.
Of humans. And there are good days and bad days. And it just so happens that today was a good day. So let's tell the people why. We have been working on a project. I guess we could say that we didn't realize how big it was going to be.
Right. It was initially, a year ago?
Yeah.
It was some suggested help that we wanted to offer.
Yeah. We work with a lot of churches. And so we have a church that we've been in close communication with and have some relationship within the church. And we felt like we should help them, but we didn't really have an in or a reason, really. Like, we just kind of felt, I think at some point they're going to need some help. The church is growing.
Yeah.
It's changing. And so
it felt like we were supposed to help prepare them for what God is doing in their community and what is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and this wasn't anything based on any conversations that we'd had. It was just kind of this weighty thing that we had. And so, about a year ago, there was a conversation that came up, and someone in the church wanted us to create a proposal for the church. And so we really mulled that over, but again, we didn't really have like a lot of relationship with leadership or anything like that. And so
I think it's important to note that upon digging into that, we did find there were a lot more, I don't want this to sound negative, but there were a lot more cracks and old pieces that needed to be replaced.
Than
initially expected. And those weren't really discovered until we were in the research and inquiry phase of looking at what is currently out there, what is the mission, how are things going, all of those intake kind of questions before we take a project on for a brand or rebrand.
Yeah, and so for us to go and create a proposal like this person wanted, it didn't make sense at all, honestly. We were just kind of like, wait, who's in on this conversation? If we're creating something for no reason, that's just a waste of our time. And it's a waste of their time if it's not something that they're ready for, willing to hear. Who are we even going to sit down with?
Well, and there was full transparency, we probably spent 8 to 12 hours
on that.
on that at that point before we realized we can't even put a proposal together because this is so much and it needs to be so hands-on.
Yeah. And it just also just didn't feel like the right time.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of let that fall by the wayside. And
Well, we communicated and we hit the pause button.
sure, yeah, that's what I mean. Like it just
I'm
was
just
something
giving you a hard time.
thanks. We just put it in the back burner.
Yeah.
We have this thing. We feel this way. We've been approached by a person, but it's not quite time yet.
It wasn't the right person to have a conversation with.
Yeah,
at
right.
the time.
Yeah, that's true. And so we just let that sit there. And over the past few months, we have gotten to know more people in the church. We've kind of been in more community and relationship with them. And so it has,
We've seen more
yeah,
deliverables. We've seen more out in public, like all of those things of how things currently are.
yeah. And I think for us, it just meant that our burden for it became heavier. That we wanted so much to see this church thrive. For us, that meant visually, obviously, being graphic designers, it's easy to like make that so important to you. And
Right.
so,
And what we're talking about is the visual identity, not the God is going to do his thing, the pastor is going to do his thing, the church community is going to do its thing, but it's
Yeah.
something we can bring to the table, and we can help to elevate all of those other things, or intrigue, bring people in other ways.
yeah. And so we just really started like feeling like, okay, maybe there is a way in here. And again, this is, at that point, probably, oh my gosh, 8 months down the line, 9 months down
Yeah.
the line before we really were like, what could we actually do? Who could we actually talk to? And initially, we thought that it might just look like helping out here and there, creating some assets. We had kind of
to
put
bring
the
things
whole,
together
yeah, like we
with
just
what
had-
they have.
yeah, because it can be hard for churches to just embrace a whole new brand package. And so I think for me, especially, I was like, let's just ignore that. I don't think that that's going to fly anyways. Let's just see if we can help create some assets
Right.
and bring some cohesion to things.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, long story short, we just ended up getting connected with the right person, the guy, the one that kind of calls the shots in that area. And to say that he was excited would probably be an understatement.
Well, this was on their radar, but we didn't know it.
Yeah.
Has been on the radar for them. So we had the feeling of, feel like we're supposed to do this, but why? And they had we need this done, but who?
Yeah. I mean, if we really had pushed our way in the door a year ago, I don't think anything actually would have come from it, because they weren't actually ready to embrace what we had to offer, and what we felt needed to happen. And so
Right.
now we're looking at this and going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that everyone was actually on the same page. We just didn't know it. So
God was lining the things up,
yeah,
pushing pause, holding back.
yeah. And so what we thought was just going to be a little bit of asset creation essentially turned into a full rebrand.
Yeah.
And I think that is because we took some liberties and like, hey, what if we did this? What if we actually looked at things from this perspective and not just made one thing here and there better, but what could it look like if we actually brought full cohesion to the church?
Right.
And I think one of the reasons it wasn't working before was that this church is good size.
Yeah.
And I would say like medium large size, like 800 people.
Probably 800 to 1,000
Yeah.
on a Sunday.
And has been bigger in the past. And, every church goes through size fluctuations and all kinds of things like that. But it's also very multi-generational. It's been around for a very
has a
long
history.
time. A rich, deep, strong history. Like,
It has a story.
yeah, that everyone in the congregation is super involved and bought into.
Yeah.
They're very invested in the fact that this is not a brand new millennial church. This is a church that's has sticking power.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be difficult
Right.
to work with churches like that because they may be less likely to want to change things. You do have that generational barrier sometimes where the people calling the shots don't have the same vision as the young people. And so,
It's been done this way for so long,
yeah,
so why change it?
our church is great. People are coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy. Like, why would we change it? And so, those are all honestly fair points.
Right.
And so, again, that was something kind of looking at this that we were like, we want to handle it delicately,
Mm-hmm.
respectfully, because this is something to be honored. This is something to
Right.
be respected
Mm-hmm.
and taken care of, handled the right way.
There's a lot of thought. There's a lot of practicalities, a lot of research, a lot of developing and listening and meeting to understand culture, community, history, current groups and workflows and processes
Yeah.
in any business or church or brand rebrand that you're doing. A rebrand is almost a more delicate ecosystem than a full just fresh branding, because you have
Right.
people who their identity in where they attend church and engage with people and community and have a relationship with Jesus, that whole cycle is tied to what they've seen for years. And the thought of that changing can be very, very hard for people who have grown up in a church, for people who have gone in and been a part of the church, have worked through the church, have been in different areas of the church, youth and young adults and adults and senior, all of those things. They're so vested in that, and understandably so.
And a lot of people, when you're talking about church culture, these people are also having really deep emotional experiences with the Lord, with their
Right.
community, with each other. They're finding freedom and breakthrough and like all of these things that happen within the four walls of the church.
Their
So,
testimony is tied to people
yeah,
walking through things at that church of different stages of life.
yeah. And so people are, they love what they love. They
Mm-hmm.
love what they fell in love with and what it looked like when they got saved or what it looked
Right.
like when they got married in the church or
Mm-hmm.
what all of those things. So that's just we kind of foresaw dealing with some of those issues, right? This is a church that's been around for 80 plus years,
Yeah.
and what is this gonna what is this gonna actually look like to change some of these things? Again, what we were seeing was just like a lack of cohesion. They have a lot going on. There's a lot of life, there's a lot of ministries, there's a lot of really good people doing great things, and God is moving in this church.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for us, where that weightiness was coming from was we felt God saying, like, hey, there's something new that I want to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Not that doesn't mean forgetting the past. It just
Right.
means I have a new thing, a new work to do in this place. We were feeling that. Lo and behold, the ministry was also feeling that, and we had no
Right.
idea. And so, we were kind of coming out of nowhere. We didn't want to push our foot in the door by any means, but we're going, oh my gosh, God wants to do something here. People have to know what this place is.
Mm-hmm.
People have to find some sort of recognition for
Right.
this church. The people that go here are going to go here.
Right.
The family, the community that has been built here, they're bought in. They're already
Right.
here. So,
Their kids are going to continue to go here.
absolutely, because we're not changing any of the experiences that people are having. But,
This is also not a church that's just open on a Sunday. This church is open
right,
multiple days a week.
yes. And so we are just really wanting to think about the person driving past the billboard, the person driving past the church, the person that's going to get a handout or a card or something like that, or they're going to see it on social media. How are they going to know what this place is, that it's safe, that it's healthy, that it's holy. And like, obviously I'm getting passionate talking about this. Like, it's just, I am so passionate about people feeling safe finding a church.
Right.
Because we know firsthand how hard that can be and how unsafe it can feel.
Right.
How
And
uncomfortable it can feel.
it's so incredibly hard for people to find a church who are already Christians. It's harder to find a church when you're a married couple, something that feels, or dating or whatever, that feels comfortable for both of you. When you have kids, it's a whole other gamut. But there's also those people who are struggling with addiction or depression or whatever that is, that maybe they Google a church in their area and they land on a website. How do you get them in the building? And that is something that, guys, we're not talking about. This is not the normal situation. This is when God puts something on your heart to dig in and do this. This is not what we do for
every client.
Every client.
No, I think that's why we felt so like we have to talk about this, because this was a lot of puzzle pieces coming together at exactly the right time.
Right.
And like I said, we walked away from today going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. And so this is definitely outside of the norm. And honestly, probably a great way to follow up last week's podcast where we had to talk about some hard things, dealing with hard clients and stuff. So this is an exact 180 of that conversation. Yeah. So we just felt like it was time for a change. And like I said, we met the right person.
And you kind of offer to help shift things.
Yeah. We just offered to be available, right? Like, what do you need?
To be an asset, not coming in to change things, but to shift things and help guide and direct things to be smooth and efficient, to be a streamlined process that is focused on reaching the one lost soul.
Yeah. So I would say from the time that we met the director here that we're going to talk to, like, from the time that we met him, what would you say? Like about a month of little conversations here and there, little suggestions.
Maybe a little
here
over
and
a
there.
month.
Yeah. Like, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing this? Have you ever thought about making your socials, your YouTube? Have you ever thought about doing it this way, looking this way? And so just little things where we were like, hey, how can we help? Let's have a conversation about stuff. That slowly turned into a larger conversation of, hey, if we're going to change anything, we kind of need to change everything.
Well, the initial conversation was, let's start before we do anything with getting cohesion in the branding, in the styling, in the visual aesthetic.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
And everything trickles down.
And that's what I mean. If we're going to change one thing, we kind of have to know what we're doing. Like, we have to have some sort of foundation. Baseline. Yeah. What other word could I use? To build off of. Because if we're handing this to teams and we're saying, go execute something, they need to have something to do that from. We can't have 6 different people doing 6 different things. And so, again, I'm glad that people are willing to volunteer and they're willing to serve and they're willing to actually get something done. But let's make sure that that we have some sort of voice. Like, we have some. But
volunteers do want to be given some framework, some playground to work in. Of these are the guidelines to go by.
Yep.
It's so hard for a lot of people, especially on a Sunday morning. It's hard for me on a Sunday morning to do anything, but getting creative on a Sunday morning in the heat of the moment is not the time to do it. The time is preparing during the week and shifting preparation to happening. And I do, this is a topic that we should touch on another episode of churches being prepared earlier in the week. And I know all y'all pastors like to wait until Saturday to get notes in, but
but your creative team is struggling.
Your creative team is drinking too many Red Bulls because of that.
Yeah.
There are ways to prepare even when a pastor changes on a Friday or Saturday, or when they don't get stuff to you until Friday or Saturday. There's
Yeah.
ways to go about that, and I think that would be a fun conversation to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dig into like our process here. You know, it took maybe a month, a little over a month to like finally get to the point where we felt like, okay, here we go. We're having this conversation now. This is more than just a couple thumbnails. This is more than just a couple flyers. This is actually, we're going to create something for this church that is for this church.
This
And
isn't
it is,
just a mood board.
no, exactly. And so, how many, well, I was going to say how many hours do you think we put in, but like, we didn't really know completely what we were getting into or who we were going to present to other than the director. And so we kind of just put together a small,
Small?
well, I guess it wasn't small. Oh, we went full in, didn't we?
Yeah, we.
Okay, so
So we started our conversation of let's put some mood boards together. That was your idea.
Right.
Let's put some mood boards together.
and
Let's
just see how you guys feel.
let's put the elements that are currently in place all together so that somebody can see it, because if you ask a lot of people, businesses, churches, I would imagine that most people have not seen how all of their assets and elements and colors and fonts and imagery look together.
Right.
I challenge you to go do that. Take a look at it. Look at other brands, how they bring things together. But coming back is, we started with the mood board. And then we started with putting the current logos in different ministries on
Right.
there. And then it kind of snowballed into
A complete brand guideline.
yeah.
I mean, so
Theory and psychology behind it.
yeah.
You didn't go light in building it. There was
Well, I knew at the end of the day, I could hand this to the director, and if we were never in another conversation, he could hand this to the pastors, and they would have all the information they need.
Right.
We put together all of the current logos so you could see how they didn't really have any cohesion to them. They were very different. Some of them were scaled very oddly, and so that made asset creation very hard. And so we put all of that together. We talked about the pain points of all of it, why it doesn't work, and then essentially why it mattered.
right.
It matters because unity matters. It matters because people want to trust you. It matters because like you want to build a recognizable brand for your church in your community. And I know we say brand. I always
I say visual voice for a church.
I know. I always feel like I'm talking about Target or something, but no, you want the voice of your church, the vision of your church to be easily recognizable and digested.
Yeah.
And so that is why it matters. And so I did. This by the end of it was a 14-page presentation that I thought would just go to the director. He could pass it along from there, and we'd be done.
We've done our
We've done
what
our
we
part.
felt like God was saying we should do,
Yep.
and that would be the end of it. But there was a lot more to it.
Yeah, and
There was a lot more research.
we didn't realize how ready the other side of the table was. They had been praying for someone to do this,
Yeah.
and we had no idea. And so, essentially, when the director got it, he said, "When can you meet with the pastor?" And we were not expecting that at all. In all of our years of creating church brands, how many times have we ever met with a pastor?
None.
Yeah. And we've done this a handful of times.
We've
More-
done this. A pastor has been like, will bypass in a Zoom call or something, or in a
Yeah.
meeting, wave their hand through the door,
Yeah.
but never actually intentionally sitting down.
Yeah, this was wild to us that they would even want to, because a lot of times this gets handed off to the board or to the creative director, and that's who we deal with. So for them to trust us, I guess, with their time,
Yeah.
to be able to sit down in a room and say, "We care, you care, let's do something awesome," it really meant a lot. And
Absolutely.
we were really taken aback by it. But let's just also comment on the fact that by the time we handed that off and we were like ready, that was like 24 hours. We met with the pastors.
Right.
Like, and so
This had been prepared a few
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah, but like this meeting kind of came out of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
And it needed to happen now because of timing and travel and people and all the
And
things.
preparing and
Yeah.
launch times, and okay, we have a few months if we start now to be ready for back to school.
Right. And so we were like, man, Easter's over. We have a minute. We have Mother's Day. But like, here we are thinking about like, how much time do we have to actually keep the momentum of something needs to change, right?
Yeah.
Because if we don't, while people are feeling that feeling of something needs to change, that's when we need to have this conversation. Because if we don't have it now, it's going to be comfortable to get comfortable again with the way things are.
And when God is pushing things,
Yeah.
and you feel like God is like streamlining things and moving things forward, you really have to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go with that guidance and really press into it. And sometimes it is that uncomfortable when you're running your own business, when you're doing freelance work, you have to have uncomfortable conversations or step out of your comfort zone to have a conversation or to ask for a meeting or to schedule something or show something that maybe isn't what they're going to want.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to say, I don't have time for you, but you continue to go for it.
Well, and I did. I kept saying like, I'm doing all of this work. They might hate this, and
Right.
usually we're a couple conversations in before we create so much.
Yeah.
But again, we were feeling the weight of this, and so it was like, no, we have to
Do
show
more.
them.
Every
the
time we
whole
sat
thing.
down, it was do more, do
Yep.
more. We just felt like God was like, do more, do more. And it's like, God, can we focus on
Can
like,
we make sure they're gonna like this before we do more? No, that is wild. We do not work that way, and so that just was like, I can't believe we're doing all of this, but we did have something that we were incredibly proud to be able to take to the table.
you spent numerous hours, more than we would ever soak into a project that wasn't on
Yeah.
a definitive path, that didn't have some form of approval. But how proud of the work that you had done were you at the end of every time it felt like God was saying do more? How proud of that work were
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this is also a conversation of obedience too, where like, no, you shouldn't run your client load this way. This was again so off the wall for us.
Yeah.
But when we did, I would sit there and I'd say, hold on, something else is coming to me. I have to make it. I have to get it down. And it's one of the best projects I've ever put together, one of the
Right.
best pitches I've ever put together. And that I think really did come because I was like, okay, God, like Jesus take the wheel,
Right.
like is definitely what happened here. And so at the end of it, I sat back and I was like, I can't believe I did all this. Like,
But
I really
even
can't,
even like the colors and the style of photos to choose, all of those things you picked and you researched for psychological and engaging reasons. There was theory behind colors and fonts and imagery. There was a lot of effort put into that that isn't just oh, these colors are pretty together,
Yeah.
and these fonts match the logo and work for paragraphs and headings and various spots.
Yeah.
So-
I think part of that too, and we said this a couple times today in the meeting, was because so many people are involved in this church and not just congregants, but like their ministry team is
Right.
large and people are really invested into what's there. We did feel pretty strongly that like this can't be one of those church rebrands that does a complete 180. You can't flip this on its head.
Oh, yeah.
Because people will not like that. So what we really tried to do was, I mean, actually their main church logo wasn't the worst thing ever. We did not create it. It had been created. And so we actually used that as a baseline of saying, let's keep
Right.
this. Let's let people keep this and be familiar with this.
And
This
use
stays the
that
same.
structure as
Yeah.
a guiding point for formulating
else.
the new.
Yeah. And so what this really was kind of just moving the needle a little bit and saying, here's where you are. Here's what it currently looks like, but it could be better. And,
Right.
we're choosing colors, based on where you are in the country. And, we don't want to copy what another church is doing for the sake of being trendy. Again, multi-generational church here. The last thing that they honestly care about is being trendy.
Right.
What they care about is like reaching the lost. So,
Right. And
yeah.
it needs to be warm and welcoming to reach. I feel like we're
Yeah.
doing a bit of a branding class here, but there needs to be a reach for your demographic. There needs to be a reach for
Yeah.
your community, for your geographical region of what works for you.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Let's talk about how you felt as you were presenting this in the room, and all of the tension that was in the room and all of the stress and no, I'm just kidding.
No, honestly, when we arrived today, I keep forgetting it was today. There was peace covering the whole thing. There was in the back of my head this idea that like they could just say no. They could say we're not ready. They could say actually we want to go a completely different route with all of this. We
Right.
don't like any of the logo mock-ups you made. We actually don't like those colors together. Like so I'm
A
kind of
version was a high likelihood.
yeah, because it always is. Like
Yeah.
literally every client comes and they have edits. And so I'm going into this meeting going, okay, I don't know what they think about this. I've never sat down on a meeting with these people
I can't be
before.
married to this because
Yeah.
they're probably going to hate something.
I'm so proud of this. I cried when I was making it, but they might not feel that way. And so we sat down and we prayed and we, laughed a little bit. And it was so good to kind of get a rapport with them.
Yeah.
Again, they're the pastors of this church. And so we want to make sure that anything that we're bringing to the table
Right.
is an elevation of the vision that they, as the pastors, have for this
Yeah.
church. It cannot be us coming and saying, no, you need to do it this way.
Right.
Our job in supporting a church is to elevate the vision.
Yeah.
That
With
is
excellence.
with excellence, with cohesion, with, all the pieces that come with that. We are not the vision casters in that scenario.
Yeah.
We are the helpers.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't know what that was going to look like. I mean, I knew they were nice people. I knew they were
Right,
great people.
yeah.
I've heard him preach and like all those kinds of things, but it just, I had no idea. And so,
So lean into that. And what did they say about it?
I mean, basically by the end of the pitch, we went through the whole thing, all 14 pages of it. And they said, great, what can we do to help you? And I don't know what the look on my face actually was, but in that moment I felt like, what did I just hear from you right now? Did you just ask how you can help us? Like,
Yeah, it was interesting that there wasn't critique. There was conversation about
Yeah.
aspects that needs to happen.
questions. We all had questions for each other. Yeah.
I might have thought they didn't care if there wasn't questions or why this, but like, can you explain this a little deeper? Things like that. How can we utilize that? Why this way when we've always heard it should be done this way? And just sitting and having that conversation, and it was so well received, very receptive.
But ultimately, they had no edits at all.
And we asked, because this does not happen. We do have branding projects that will happen and there's no edits. They just absolutely love it after the concepts.
Those are usually much smaller projects.
Those are
though.
mom and pop. Those
Yep.
are startups. Those are single product. Those are not well established organizations in any format.
This was us coming in and saying, here are your colors. Here is your visual voice. Here are the proposed brand new logos for essentially all of the ministries. And we're going to change all of the print assets. And we're going to, like, we basically gave them this plan of like, hey, this is going to look like a 3-phase situation because the church is so large and has so much output. This is going to take a while, and here are all the things.
Right.
And they just looked at us and said, okay. when can you start? And I've
No.
never has that ever
I,
happened. If you
people
are a
never.
creative, if you have created anything for a church, I think most of you will attest to the fact that this does not happen. Um, Especially with pastors. Pastors tend to have the most opinions of anyone. And so how many times do we put like deliver a project
Mm,
and the creative director comes back and says, "Hey, our pastor didn't like X, Y, and Z about
right.
this." Fully expect that every single time.
Right. A lot, and when that doesn't happen, I just stumbled over my words. When that doesn't happen, it's always taken and said, okay, can we get a copy of this? And we're going to review this. I'm going to sit on it and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
So those are the things that are typical.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically how this works. And so we asked multiple times and we asked specific questions. How do you feel about this? How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel about this? And had a conversation about those things. And this meeting went almost
Longer.
3 times as long as we had anticipated.
Yeah.
But in asking those questions, the pastor literally had no question left
Mm-mm.
or no thing. He has been praying for someone to come and do this. Multiple people in this church have been praying for someone to come and do this.
We had no idea. We thought they were just fine the way, like, we
Right.
thought they were fine the way they are.
Right.
I
And
I never imagined them seeing the need for this the way
right.
that we felt the weight of it.
But we felt like God was pushing,
Yeah.
and God was clearly pushing this to fruition,
Mm-hmm.
and that this needs to happen. And I mean, we'll continue talking, but I'm extremely excited for what God is going to do through this
Mm-hmm.
over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
In
And that's
implementing.
kind of what we wanted to do too, is like, as the church continues to grow and generations change and all of those kinds of things, we wanted to really give this church a timeless brand.
Mm-hmm.
We really wanted to give them something that they can look at the past, they can honor the
Right.
past with it, and they can also create for the future.
Yeah.
And so what that, that doesn't look like every other church right now. That doesn't
Mm-mm.
look like black and white and bold and blue and
Right.
all the things. But it looks like something a little bit more classy, a little bit more laid back,
Elegant
a little bit more
and
warm. And
yep,
mhm,
warm and welcoming, and
yeah,
that can transition through into absolutely every aspect.
yeah. It's funny. One of the funny things I think that happened today was we had shown some restraint in certain ministries of the church, because, well, I'll just say the seniors, they like the things they like the music they have their classes, and they are the coolest bunch of seniors ever. But we had kind of shown some restraint, I think, in like messing with any of their stuff,
Mm-hmm.
especially their logo and anything like that, because there had been this idea of like, oh, I don't know,
They're set in their ways.
they're set
They
in their
don't.
ways.
They don't need any
Yeah.
changes.
And we sat there and we were like, hey, just so you know, like, we're not kind of including them in this because we don't,
We don't want to
they're
ruffle
good.
feathers
Yeah.
or.
They have their things they like, and that is totally
Mm-hmm.
fine. They can continue doing what they're doing. And the pastors just looked at us and were like, no, they're going to love this. And I think they would be more offended if they were left out of this. And so now
So
this
let's
is,
go.
yeah, like, this is something that we get to, show their ministry as well and bring them along
Mm-hmm.
for not just where the church is going, but like to honor them in the
Yeah.
process and say, hey, your years of faithfulness to this church,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's what this is bred from.
Right.
This, again, this church is like 85 years old. And
Yeah.
so this is, a lot of these people have been here since they were young adults or even teenagers, and they first got saved, and they're so invested in what God is doing in this
Right.
house. Why would we leave them out? Like, how
Yeah.
silly, because they're the lifeblood of what this church is. And
Absolutely.
so that was just, I think, one of the more like funny, unexpected things that happened. And one of the things I'm actually the most excited about now is getting to work with some of those people and kind of glean from their wisdom as well.
Like, what are their testimonies? What are their stories?
Yes.
They're like the OG creative saints that.
Listen, they were putting all of this together without laptops, okay?
Yeah.
I can have some mad respect for that. Yeah, I just am so excited. I don't know. This was so unexpected. It it just went down unlike anything we've ever had.
It laid groundwork 10 times what we ever expected, and there is so much work to be done.
Yeah.
And there is the opportunity to God pushed this. God pushed us in this direction to do this, not knowing a lot of things. There's a lot of variables and a lot of logistics that don't add up, that don't make sense from a business standpoint. We are all in to fulfill this project and to make this another level for this organization and this church, to create processes, to create documentation, to create training, to do training, all of the I's and T's dotted and crossed, and help to implement something in there. And I think it's really going to be cool to see how we can take a process and put it into even like a book that is available, that they can utilize in absolutely every area, and a volunteer won't be overloaded. It's, I can come in and I can serve on a Sunday morning, and I know exactly what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. And I can accomplish that with excellence without this. Well, I hope I did a good enough job.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's important. I think that churches get so overwhelmed. I mean, honestly, they just get overwhelmed with there's a lot of, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of competition in churches. And I think if you can just really create a process that works for you and for your team and for your, like, I don't know. I really, honestly, it makes me kind of sad to say that. Like, the whole competition thing. Like,
the competition thing and the promising to be able to accomplish work, trying to sell someone on a project when you aren't actually capable of delivering something that has depth to it. And that's trust in the creative world.
Yeah, I did kind of want to talk about, like, obviously this was few and far between. I do not ever expect anything like this to ever happen again, or for anything to be this smooth again. But I do think part of the reason we came out of that meeting with the response we did is because we were so prepared.
Yeah.
And again, normally we wouldn't maybe be so prepared, or I'm not creating a 14-page presentation for every brand guide or for every client.
At the end of the process, we have that, but
yeah, right. No, for the initial pitch, never is it that long. I know that the Lord put it on our hearts to do that, so we did it, but it wasn't just thrown together. There was a lot of thought and effort and prayer and preparedness that went into this. And had we just shown up to the table with, here's some ideas, and here's some color variations you could use, and here's some this or that, I don't think it would have been as well received.
This is, I think, important to inform everybody. We didn't just show up with a 14-page brand guide. There was also an accompanying website that was halfway built out, the framework for the entire organization, flow, everything.
A few links, and I could probably go live with that thing pretty soon.
The site could go live in another 4 hours of work.
And I'm not recommending that people do that. That is definitely over delivery. So,
but God placed this.
He did
on our heart as something important to do, and when it was
luckily for me, websites don't take me that long. So if you are not able to put it together in a timely manner, I do not recommend trying to throw a website up for a
but
pitch, but
it was okay. This is a good start to just
yeah.
show how this could look. And it just felt like as you were working on it, you're like, I feel like I just need to do this. And it was that God nudge of a little bit more. I need a little
Yeah.
bit more. I need a
Yeah.
little bit more.
But I think what I was trying to say about being prepared is it could have been easy to just say, okay, here's a few pages of
Right.
a website, or here's just the homepage, and that, this is just a taste.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could have gone in and instead of saying, this is the color palette we see for your brand, we could have given them 3 different options for color palettes for their
Right.
brand. We could have
Which we
given,
typically do.
which we typically do. But something about this project felt like authority, right? We sat down at the table and we said, this is what God has given us for this. Here's your color palette. Here are your proposed logos. Here is what your website could look like
Right.
today. We were so over prepared,
Yeah.
and we sat down with so much authority, God given authority, I feel like I should say, not, what's the other word I'm looking for? Not boastfulness, not, ego, anything like that, but it was
Confidence.
authority. Yeah, it wasn't, well, not even overconfidence though. I think authority is the word.
Right.
Like, that is what we felt going into this.
I just
And-
mean, I think we sat down confidently. There,
Yeah.
typically when you present concepts, you present to pitch anybody. There's a little in your stomach. There's a little okay. Oh man, all
false
right.
humility, maybe
There,
even.
yeah,
like,
there's this. Oh my God, I spent so much time doing this. I really
hope they don't
hope
crap on it.
they don't hate every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that is the reality of creative work.
Yeah.
Is you may think that you have put together the best thing and they think it's rubbish.
Yeah.
And so that's always a thing.
Yeah.
Going into this meeting, there wasn't any anxiety. There wasn't any fear of rejection. There wasn't any of the typical pieces that go there. And so we sat down confident that God had laid this project on our hearts, that we had given it excellence in every form, including the communication of, hey, this is what we felt was supposed to be done, and now we're giving it to you, and we're sitting down with the right people, and here we go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that because of all of those reasons and the way that we were prepared and the way that we sat down, they trusted us.
Right.
We presented it and they trusted us. And that's so huge, especially in faith-based spaces, because we're also saying, hey, your congregation and your community need to trust you.
Right.
And so when we're presenting something, it needs to be prepared. It needs to be prayed over. It needs to be meticulously thought about, because I'm not trying to just throw stuff out there for churches. It's too important. The
Right.
work is too important. And the communities that these churches are reaching deserve more than that.
Absolutely.
And that is our heart in the work that we do with churches. I think that there are a lot of businesses that are built and do really well, and they offer assets to churches, and
Yeah.
that is a good thing. But for us, this is holy work, and it's our calling. And so to sit down and be anything less than prepared
Right.
would be a waste of everyone's
We wouldn't
time.
be coming to the table with excellence.
No, we wouldn't. And so I think, again, because this project just was so weighty for us, the way that we approached it left them with a lot of trust for us. And that felt really good.
Yeah.
It all felt right. And had we done this a year ago when we were initially asked, it would have been the wrong timing.
We wouldn't have been able
it
to lead
never
that
would have worked.
meeting with the right authority, confidence, whatever you
I
want
don't
to get.
think we ever would have gotten to sit down with the pastor. Like, that never would have happened. And
No,
I think
yeah.
there would have been a lot of communication, like, the back and forths and
Yeah.
all of the annoying stuff that comes with that.
4 months of emailing back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yeah. I don't think that this happened by chance. I
No.
don't think that this was just a right place, right time kind of thing. It was like God put us in the right place at the right time. And with the right people. And so, I don't know. I would encourage you, whether you work with churches or you work with any client ever, over preparation is not a bad thing.
No.
I think it's important to know what you're doing and trust yourself, trust your gut, but be prepared, especially when you're going in for a pitch.
Absolutely.
Be confident in
Do your
what you're
research
saying.
so that you are confident. Don't just look up the company
Yeah.
the day before you go.
Yeah.
Make some time, give some time. And this goes back to what we've talked about a few times of know your schedule, create a process, hone in your process, work on your process so you know I need to research this, I need to have this kind of information so I feel confident to say I can do this. Our portfolios, our reels, our book of work, whatever it is, those go so far to show, okay, and get the first meeting. But the pitch is your interview. Your pitch is this is going to make or break it. And
people don't want to hire someone that doesn't care about what they're building.
No.
So have some buy-in, have some, again, build that
invest
trust.
a little bit. And I've heard a few people who have said, build that research time into your quoting.
Yeah.
I get that. I see that. But also it is challenging you to, how can you research and come up and be an asset to a company in an industry you don't know? Do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Hone in your skills of doing the research and be an asset. That's what sets you apart from your competition.
Yeah. And I don't know. Today blew my mind. I don't want to sound so like telling people what to do, because today was not the norm, and
not the norm.
I think we're going to bed, let's be honest, that's what's happening, with just a real appreciation for the work that we get to do.
Yeah.
And that we get to be a part of the creative space, not just with churches, but in general. This is just our favorite thing. And
I love when God pushes and it doesn't make sense and I just don't question it anymore. Yeah. And then it ends up being one of my favorite days.
Yeah. And it's days like this that actually just confirm okay, we're doing the right thing. It can be really hard to own your own business and deal with people and feel like you're making progress. Because most days aren't like this, and there are the feast and famine moments, and there are just hard days, and lots of work, and clearly very late nights, and today just made me thankful for all of it, for the whole journey. And so I don't know, I'd love to hear some wins, if you guys have ever had a day or a client that has been willing to
a super God move.
Hey, no edits. If that's ever happened to you, I really want to hear that story, because this is the first time that's ever happened to us. But yeah, what is maybe a time where God really showed up in your work and
that's good.
Walked you through this process, and you came out of it just knowing that he was a part of it. So yeah, let us hear from you. Like, comment, share, subscribe.
Do the things.
What do they say in the YouTube videos? Click that bell or whatever.
Click that button.
Anyways, go to YouTube, click the button. Yeah, let's catch up with you guys on socials, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.